So, welcome to another episode of Changing Lanes. Today, we've got Charlotte on the podcast. When I first started to flight the idea of changing lanes in my head and started to kind of brainstorm topics and names that I wanted to have on the show, Charlotte was one of the first people that came to my consciousness. Charlotte is a cognitive hypnotherapist, which is easy for me to say, performance coach, and neuroscientist. Charlotte and I worked together very briefly last year, and despite only a few short conversations, which is again easy for me to say, her impact on me and my progress I made off the back of that has been something that's really, really special and made her an absolute no-brainer inviting her onto the show. I feel Charlotte has a lot more to offer than just one episode of the podcast. So I reckon we might end up having part 2, 3, and 4 at this rate. Good morning, Charlotte.
Morning. Morning, Harvey. Really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Amazing. So I want to start off with something that we've spoken about before, and the idea of it has really, ever since it happened, just made total sense. Now, it's the idea of toxic goals versus healthy goals. Now, you said that T word, and I was just like immediately switched off. I started to really understand what you were saying and what like a toxic goals were. It's something I felt completely attacked by, and I'm like, oh, right, okay, there's something to unpack in this. So yeah, let's get started. What on earth are toxic goals?
Well, hang on, because I'd like to return the question for a second. I'm curious here. What triggered you when you heard toxic goals? Because that's really interesting, right? What triggered you?
It's the word. It's the word toxic. I've always I try to avoid labeling stuff like that. Like it's something I learned like really early in my personal development journey, and I'm not
Mm,
such like a modern word, and like you wouldn't have said that
yeah,
years ago. But like I needed to look past that surface level of the word toxic word. Like it isn't really about what word you could have called them sausage goals, and also
yeah,
remains the same. Like
yeah.
that's what it was for me. I turned on to
Mm,
the word, and it's like a moderny Instagrammy. Like that's the perception I had of it. It's like modern Instagram.
gotcha.
And that's where
Yeah,
that kind of like that very like
yeah.
feeling, which is ironically another sort of Instagrammy word. Yeah. So like let's dig into the
So that's really interesting what you just said. And the reason why I asked the question is because, and I get what you say. So it's a bit like good, bad food or healthy, unhealthy. Like it's become right. And that's a very important point I want to make about when I talk about toxic goals. The first thing I always say to my clients is there are no bad goals. You can tell me I want to lose 10 pounds by the end of next week. I want to make I want to have 100,000 pounds in my bank account by the end of the year. Goals that I have with my clients, way more than you could expect, by the way. Stuff like that. There's nothing is toxic in the same way that nothing is bad to eat. Everything is okay within reason. The thing, what that defines whether a goal is toxic or not is the driving force behind it, whether this driving force is positive or negative, right? So if you go after your goal from a place of fear, from a place of worrying that if you don't reach these goals, it means something, not just it means something, it means something about who you are as a person. It's your identity that's been questioned. Versus if you go about these goals from a place of peace, of joy, of knowing, you're okay without them, but it's just more of the good stuff to get them, right? So I always give the example, which helps people understand the difference of imagine if I tell you, that take this cup of full of water, and then you put it on top of on your head, you balance it on your head, and you're gonna go. I'm gonna challenge you to go from one side to the other side of the room, right? And I'll tell you if you drop if it drops on the floor and it breaks, or if you spill anything, I'll kick you really hard in the stomach. Now, how do you feel about it? Do you want to do it?
no, I don't.
Right.
Like just paralyzes you. And the thing is, I can remember talking to you about is just this idea of like these goals. You just end up in this kind of
Yeah.
city
Yeah.
panic state where you can't relax and be creative and be abundant and like
Exactly.
mistakes in a safe space.
Yeah. So that's exactly it, right? Exactly. You described it perfectly fine. So you feel paralyzed. And if I were to force you to do it, you'd probably do a terrible job because you'd be stressed. You'd be thinking about what would happen if you drop the cup on the floor the whole time instead of focusing on what you're doing, right? Now, if I tell you exactly the same challenge, but this time, if it drops on the floor, nothing happens. However, if you manage, I'll give you £1,000. Now, how do you feel about it? Exactly, right? You want to do it. You're straight into it. You're like super motivated. It becomes fun. It becomes exciting. It's like I've got nothing to lose, but if I do get it, great. Well, essentially, that is the difference between the toxic and a healthy goal. The goal hasn't changed. You still have the same goal. You're still going to end up with the same results. The way you're going to go about your goals, with the mentality that you're going to have about your goals, that's going to define not only your experience, but how well you're going to do at achieving these goals. And that's what people lack to understand is that the moment the moment you start realizing you don't need to reach your goals to be okay, you get them quicker and with a lot more fun as well, having a lot more fun. And that's the beauty of it. So that's the main difference between toxic and healthy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it's like I said, it's toxic goals are very like from outside of you. They're not like what you deep down want. It's like, and the amount of goals that I've set of I'm gonna I'm gonna buy this thing, and ultimately that's kind of like now I could be like, I'm gonna buy this pair of trainers because I want to buy this pair of trainers. I don't really care what anyone says. I know I've set goals in the past where it's like do that so I can show off or to them or impress
Yeah.
them. And it's like actually I'm buying stuff and I'm doing stuff for like it's less about you. It ends up being about other people. And I think that can actually be really positive for a goal. Like like you said, it's just the framing and the packaging of it. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with the goal of like I'm gonna save £100 in this paycheck, and I'm gonna go and buy myself a pair of these trainers that I've really wanted for ages. I don't know why I'm talking about trainers.
You want some trainers, Harvey. You want some trainers. Go get the trainers.
Hey, and it's fine now. My collection. So I've got these. I've got like these. You know, like that's and doing that because you want to, and you've worked hard for that, and like you've seen it, and that's kind of your thing that you're going after. Like, and you're going to be completely okay if you don't like
Yeah.
you need to buy a new tire. Like that's as in that money that you put to one side for that has to go on a tire because you can't not have a tire to not go to work and not go to do this. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, like I said, it's one of those ones like it matters less if you reach it.
And I think you raised another point here, which is the sense of purpose. So and we go into and when we talk about that, we can go into procrastination and all of this stuff as well, which is why do people struggle reaching their goals? Why is it sometimes so difficult? And they always go back to habits and stuff that get in the way of them and all this. And the first thing that I work on with my clients when we come to goals that they are struggling achieving is first of all, it's the driving force, right? Is there a belief that, if you don't get there, it will mean something about who you are? That's the first thing. But then the second thing is this really something that you want? Is this inspiring enough? Is there a purpose behind it? Right? Because if you take weight loss, for instance, I'll give you a very, very specific example of something that happened to me recently. Right. So I've been ditching the gym at the beginning of the year for I think for 2 months. I'm normally someone who enjoys going. I go to the gym, I go for a run. I train about 3 to 5 times a week, and I really enjoy doing it. This isn't anymore about punishment like it used to be before. It's really something I want to do and I enjoy doing. And it's been in the whole beginning of the year, I couldn't get my ass out of bed in the morning. I just couldn't. I couldn't. And I'm very much into, you listen to your body, you go with it. But after a while, I started to feel a bit frustrated because I was like, I actually want to go, but I can't find the motivation in the morning. And then one day I was with my daughter. My daughter is nearly 4. So she's now 16 kilos. She's a proper human being. And I've been carrying her around all her life. And then one weekend, I just pick her up because she didn't want to walk. I pick her up. And then I was like, oh, I was like, man. And I was like, she's getting heavy now. And then a thought popped in my head. And that thought was, I'm counting the days now until I can never, ever pick my daughter again. She's growing up very quickly, and it's going to be the end. And one day it will be the last time I pick her up. That broke my heart, first of all. Like, I felt really emotional in the moment. But what it did is it created this like inspiration. So I was like, I've got to go to the gym. Got to go to the gym and I've got to work on my arms and I've got to get stronger because I want to pick her up and I want to keep on enjoying this moment a little bit longer. Well, I'll tell you this, the next day, I didn't need to put my alarms to get up in the morning and to go to the gym. I did not need a little pep talk in the morning to go. I was just super excited about going to the gym. And I think that's the thing, right? And we talk about like weight loss and stuff like that. Yeah, it's fine. If you want to lose weight, it's great. Now, if you want to lose weight because there's some conditioning going on in your head that you need to look a certain way, these are not your goals. These are stuff that have been inceptioned into your brain and that are not actually yours. And the reason why you're struggling keeping up with this, with the weight loss and all that, it's not because you don't want to lose weight. It's because the purpose behind it isn't strong enough. The intention isn't strong enough. Now, when you think about that, it's like, what is it going to, so what I do, my class is like, what is losing weight going to do for you? And then we dig a little bit into some like deeper, stronger, more self-centered goals and purpose. Like, it's going to allow me to move, to be stronger. It's going to allow me to do more of what I want in my life, to have more energy during my day, to be more productive, to do all this and all of this stuff, right? That they feel super energizing and people like light up when they start talking about that. And that becomes easier. And then that's where you nip procrastination in the bud. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Like it's funny you say that because that's kind of one of the examples that I wrote down of like a healthy goal. Like on paper at the moment, I I have a weight loss goal. Now,
Mm.
I was writing this down and I don't know whether I've invented something or I've just regurgitated something, but like losing weight is just the process. Like for me, for
Yeah.
this goal, right? It's just the process, right? And ultimately, like, what does that really mean? That means consuming less food, moving more, and then putting my body under positive challenge. That's all that
Mm.
is.
Mhm.
What do I then? I'm like, well, what do I actually want? Because I've said this, I don't really
Yeah.
care about the fucking scale. What do I care about? I want more energy so I can do more. My output increases so I can have more energy, more impact to change my life and work towards other stuff. Yeah, the stuff that really like is
Uh-huh.
important. You know, even in the past few weeks where I've kind of been more mindful around everything, I've just found I've got a lot more mental clarity. Waking up
Uh-huh.
easier in the morning, which helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
less rushed. Not having that feeling of rush doesn't put me in that scarcity rushed mindset. Um, you know, like a level of like improved mood, body confidence. And then it's like looking around, like making informed choices. Like, I don't want this to end up being a bit of a weight loss podcast, but like for me, like it was like, the amount of times that I'd in the past had a chocolate bar and been like, well, I've fucked it. What's the point? But like last night, yeah, I went for a walk, and on the walk, I went and brought like a chocolate bar, and I was like, hang on, like let's look at the actual like realization. And again, I looked at I not forget how I like fuck how feel. I looked at like the data, and I'm like, actually, do you know what? That was only like 500 calories. Like,
Yeah.
I
Zooming out. It's zooming out of that moment and looking at not just that specific moment, but look at your week, look at your month, look at all of this. And I think, and you touch on something also very, very important here, which I like to call so it's what we call the restriction reward cycle, right? If you restrict yourself, then the moment you have that one bar of chocolate, that one moment where your attention goes elsewhere or you get a bit pissed off, because that's going to eventually happen if you restrict too much. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have that one bar and you're going to go and fuck it and then go all the way, like of eating everything, doing all of the stuff and all that. I call it the fuck it, fuck that cycle of hell, because you go restrict, 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 right? You go restrict, restrict, restrict. You do everything right. You do perfectly fine. And then, of course, because it's not sustainable, and you're gonna get frustrated at some point. There's that one moment where someone's gonna piss you off. Your coat's gonna get tucked into the door or something or whatever, and then you're gonna go fuck it, and then you're gonna eat, and then you're gonna go all the way to the reward cycle, like again and again. And so you're going to eat everything, you're going to drink, you're going to do whatever you want, all the stuff that you've been depriving yourself from, you're going to do. And then you're going to go, fuck that, and then go back and back and forth and back. I've done this for 15 years, and most of my clients are stuck in that cycle. And it's when you start listening, first of all, like you said, zooming out and looking at the bigger picture, right? Which you can't always do in the moment when you're feeling really emotional and really triggered. And it's about just knowing that, reassuring yourself, like, it's okay. I don't have to do anything about it right now. I can look at the data later. When you look at it, you realize actually it wasn't that bad. It was just one bar of chocolate. It's not going to it's not the end of the world. The judgment you have on yourself for having that bar of chocolate is what's creating the ripple effect of all the other events after that. That's what's bringing you back into the fuck that cycle of hell. It's fuck it, I fucked it, I'm shit, I'm not good enough, I'm all of that. So I might as well indulge. That's what's creating the problem. So it's always about, it's not the actions, your actions aren't the problem. The judgment you have on your actions is what's creating that infinite cycle that you can't get yourself off.
Like, I think it's really important as well to have that, like, as much as zoom out is to zoom back in. So in the zoom out, I realized why I had that. I went and was more inclined to do something like that because I'd started to like float this new idea, and actually it just created a feeling of anxiety in me, and it was just like a not knowing, and like, God, have I opened Pandora's box here? But I'm like, actually, I'm aware of that, and I could have so easily, and I know I've done it in the past, have like gone back and have not had dinner, and then it just left me out of it, whacks my routine out of. Yeah, I had dinner. I had it a lot later than I thought I was going to, but I was like, no, it's really important for me to have that, to then actually, like, that's a normal routine. I've closed that loop, and I'm going to focus on.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like that was my zoom out, but I zoomed in. I think it's actually really important of like sitting there and being like, oh no, the scale's not moved as much as I would like this week, or like that there hasn't been the progress I wanted to. And it's actually like just zoom in on the day. What my daily kind of like movers, my daily kind of metrics, like for this kind of process that I'm in right now, I'm like, actually like waking up earlier, um, tracking and not like judging myself on the food that I eat and the steps that I do, like preparing to reduce decision fatigue. Like that's a massive one for me. If I have to like make the decision, I'll just get like in my own head about it and then just do something random that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
And little things like parking further away, like that's what I've committed to. Like if I'm doing that on my daily, like I can then be like, is that enough? But I need to give it time. I find that things aren't moving the way that I want to, is like I can always move the metrics. Like it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's set in stone.
That's something that people who listen might relate quite a bit to, is that something that we can find it difficult to do that when we are being triggered. So in the moment, let's say you go on the scale and you realize that the scale hasn't moved the way that you wanted it to move, right? It's not always the right moment to zoom in and to look at what's going on, because in that moment you're being triggered, you're being emotional, you've got all of this, I'm not good enough, I knew I was a failure, all of this, that narrative, that whatever your weaknesses or your script, I like to call it, the way you go back to when you feel insecure comes back in that moment, right? It can be like all this negative talk that is happening in your head in that moment is just being triggered by that event. Now, if at that moment you're trying to fix the problem, what you will realize is that you don't fix the problem, you fix how you feel about the problem. So for instance, my narrative for 15 years was, every time I was indulging, every time I was putting on weight or anything, I would go for a 10K run or really hard hit workout or something like that, right? That was my punishment. But that was also my way of making myself feel better in the moment. What I wasn't realizing is I wasn't solving the problem of having gained weight or having indulged the night before, whatever. I was just solving the emotion of insecurity I had in the moment. Because what would happen is that that action that I was taking, so for me, it was running a 10K, but for anyone who listens, it could be entering a juice diet, entering signing up for like a gym, a very expensive gym membership, or whatever that is, right? Whatever it is, or sometimes numbing the feeling by eating even more, right? I'm so shit, I might as well eat more. Is that all of these actions are counterproductive to the problem, because that 10K that I would do, not only that wouldn't really solve the problem, it's not one 10K that's going to make me lose the weight or anything like that, but also it would bring me back into that reward punishment cycle, meaning that that 10K will be my punishment. Probably at some point later in the day, which I wasn't realizing at the time, I realized later, some point in the day later, I will probably binge on something or have alcohol or do something to make myself feel better for the punishment that I put on myself earlier. Because your body is incredibly wise and your body will always keep scores. So if you punish it, it will seek reward at some point. And so all these reactions that you have in the moment of being triggered, being emotional, being insecure about your body, all of that stuff are going to be counterproductive. They are not trying to solve the problem. They are trying to solve the emotion. So everything that you said, absolutely. But for you to be able to do that, to create a better routine for yourself and do little steps you had to be calm about it. You had to not feel emotional about it. You had to be able to look at, like you said, the data. So to be in a space where this isn't anymore a story about me being lazy, about me being fat, about me being this, about me being that. It is just something isn't quite working in what I've been doing. So I need to figure out how to make it work better, right? But to be able to do that, you need to let the emotion pass first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. It's made me think of, like, there's in the past, like if I, like stepped on the scales, I would have had, and I'm like, oh, brilliant, like, 2 kilos down this week, or whatever. I would be like, oh, brilliant, like, I tell you what, I can sneak a little, hit something here, but like, it's almost like as part of the celebrate. But now, what I've kind of realized now, and it's something that it's quite new to me, and I'm kind of getting my head around, um, is this idea of kind of like shrinking the wavelength. So instead of having super highs, which can mean super lows, I'm kind of just trying to strip as much, like, the fluff and the emotion out of it, and I'm actually
Mm.
make the wavelength really small. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
don't end up then having like these massive highs. Like, I know people that have, like every time that they would, hit I've lost a stone, they would go absolutely ham with, like,
Hmm.
they go and spend £100 at the local Chinese or something like that. But it's actually, if we reduce these, okay, cool, it's cool. Like the next one, the next one. And that's something that, I spoke to a guy on here a couple weeks ago, Sam Lehman, and he's an ex rugby player, and he was like, the whole time that was playing, he was like, I'm just focusing on like the next play, the next time I get the ball, where like the next pass, the next kick, like
Yeah.
it's all that he, like, when he was playing, I'm like, that's all I need to do. And obviously, you have your
Mm.
play styles and your strategy and your game plan and all of that, but it's like, actually, like, what's my next cog in this? And
Yeah.
I've is really positive. And yeah, like, looking, like, I, I don't think people look at their goals and like what they're working on. It doesn't matter what it is. It's like, actually, like, you know this decision that I have always made has got me X result. I do not like X result, so the next time I'm presented with that sort of decision, like, deliberately taking the other one, like, I'm always saying,
Mm.
actually, like, I'm just going to turn right and just see what happens. And
Yeah.
I keep coming back to, and when I was writing, like, kind of like some notes and some pointers for this, and I don't think it was even in this section, but I've got round to it anyway. It is just like, fuck around and find out. And like, it sounds so like flippant and coy, but it's something that, like, I'm like, it doesn't matter if I go left or right. Like, I'm always taking the left, or what if I took the right today?
It's the ability to. I love what you just spoke about. It's a difference between. There's basically two ways you can go about any situation, whether it's your weight loss, whether it's your goals, whether it's your life, anything. It's curiosity or judgment. There's no other way. It's one or the other. Either if you go into judgment or assumption, you keep yourself small. You stay stuck. Not saying, by the way, this is always a bad thing. Your judgment helps you, has saved you from very dangerous situations before, right? If you are in a dicey neighborhood at midnight, your judgment is going to go, you should probably get the fuck out of here, right? And even though nothing has actually happened to you, but your judgment is here to keep you safe. So it's not saying you should never go with judgment, right? But it's being able to make the difference when your judgment is helping you and when it's hindering. And in situations like these, like anything that has to do with your progress, with your development, with your future, really, you need to let curiosity in. And you know what does this better than anyone else? Children. As a child, we don't have judgment. We don't have what we call the ego. The ego is still developing itself. It's not being formed yet. My daughter is 4. She's just starting to get an understanding of ego, of people's basically people's vision of herself, her perception of herself in relation to other people that did not exist before, right? Actually, I think it starts around 18 months. It's the do you know the test, the red dot test, where you put children in front of you put children in front of a mirror, they put a red dot on their forehead to know if they know if they know it's them, they do this, they try to remove the red dot, right? They do it with animals too. Apparently pigs pass the red dot test. For people who think that pigs are stupid, pigs are incredibly intelligent. So that's the understanding of the ego, right? There's a me out there that other people see, and that me that other people see and potentially judge needs to be in different ways and stuff like that. But their understanding of the ego is very small. So that's the reason why children are such good learners. They learn so quickly because besides the neuroplasticity and the brain forming itself, obviously, they have no worry or fear of judgment because they don't even know what judgment is. So they make mistakes all the time and they learn from their mistakes, right? If we had judgment in our periphery, in our mind when we're younger, we wouldn't have never learned how to walk and talk. First mistake would be like, I'm never doing this again. I'm so shit at talking.
Yeah. You think about the amount of times when like kids are learning to walk or ride a bike or something along those lines, and like you they dust themselves up, they get back on, they
Yeah,
might put their head and have a little cry about it, but they get back up,
yeah,
they keep going and they
yeah.
keep going and they keep going. And fucking most people are walking, talking, can ride a bike. Like that's yeah. But then you see fully grown adults. I can't do that.
Well,
I'm toys like that. Ironically, they act like the babies and the children like that as fully grown adults. And I think we're all guilty of that to an extent. Like the amount of times that I'd like set off a job application or whatever. Like I didn't get that one. There's no fucking bike. Like
yeah,
just go in on it, and instead of it being like it's almost you go into that like we were saying a minute ago, like that sort of like childlike curiosity, next play, next thing, like mindset.
yeah,
Like I think it's so valuable. I like notice when you're in that, you're not then like kind of judging your own progress because you're in the doing rather than
yeah.
being like, well, I didn't do this and didn't do that. And you remove, like you said, you remove that judgment, and we then look in. Oh my God, like actually, when you do zoom out and you do take a break, you're like, oh my God, I pulled that off. I did that.
Yeah.
I did that progress. Noticing things about yourself. I never used to have that habit. I used to give up at this point.
Yeah.
And it's
It's to circle back to where we talked at the very beginning. The reason we do this is because it becomes an identity. Our mistakes are not, we stop seeing them when we stop seeing what we do as little experiments, like we do when we're children. It starts becoming the results that we get from it becomes an identity. So we take things personally. Every time you get pissed off by a mistake you made about something someone said to you or did to you, anything like that. If you get pissed off, ask yourself, how am I taking this personally? How am I making this thing, whatever happened, a story about me? Because you do every single time. And the moment you realize that, the moment you can let go of it, you're like, okay, this isn't about me. It's actually not about me. Because when you think about it, even people being rude to you, even someone insulting you, even things that do feel very personal, is never about you. It's always about their lack of their limitation, their lack of empathy, their lack of the shortfall on different things. It's not about you. It's directed towards you, but it's not about you. And the moment you stop taking this personally and making this a story about who you are, they must be right. If they say this, it must mean that I'm that and I'm this. And if I made that mistake, if I failed that interview, if I didn't lose the 5 pounds, if I know that, that means I'm not good enough. I'm not this. And you start seeing it as something didn't quite work. How can I make this work better? There's literally nothing you can't achieve from that space. Like it's really, really difficult to limit yourself from a place of curiosity. Almost impossible, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Almost being okay with like people having their opinion of you, because
Yeah.
there's the people in life and you're like, they seem to have it out for you, they give you the dirtiest looks, and then there's just people that are like, you know, you've never really had anything to do with them, and they're just so kind and nice and about things, and there's no real rhyme or reason. And I was thinking about this, like in like the container for it, like a good one is like the gym, right? There's going to be one. Some people have, you know, like one day you're going to go in, you're like, right, I've only got half an hour, bish bash bosh. I'm going to go from fly through things. Um, Other people are going to, you know, there might be a day where you know, you're going to the gym to let steam, and like people are going to have interactions with you. They don't have to be verbal. You can just be in the same vicinity, be like, oh, what's that fucking guys miserable today, and you form these kind of like judgments and opinions of people. Like they're going to think what they think, and there's going to be times where you might, you know, hold the door open for someone or let them go first.
Mm.
And everyone's going to, like, you know, even if there's those so micro interactions, or if there's people that you get to know really well and you become friends with, like everyone in that room more than likely is going to have like a different opinion of you. You could put it in a plane or a train or
Yeah.
your workspace, like everyone's going to have an opinion of you, big or small or positive or negative. It doesn't really matter, because you're then going to go back to them and be
Yeah.
like, oh, you're going to do that, and it's, you know, like you can't say that, oh, I don't like, or he's a fucking or she's a bitch, and then be like, well, actually, like, why do people think that about me? Like the
Yeah.
micro interaction easy for me to say, micro interactions that we have with people on a daily basis that we don't even pay any attention to, that start to form opinions and be like, oh, it's that bloke with the, you know, that always grunts, and you know, oh, he's annoying.
Well, I would even say something like that can actually help quite a lot with this, because a lot of my clients talk about that a lot and about like other people's opinion and all that. If you're being really real with yourself right now, how much time do you spend worrying about yourself, what people think of you, how you behave, how you've been perceived, all of that, would you say, during the day? Like how much time?
More than you would like to imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I've asked that question a lot, and it ranged between 80 and 90%. Like usually like people are like, oh my God, all the time. And then like or even more. And then like, how much time do you actually spend paying attention to what other people do? To how much time do you spend judging other people versus how much time you spend judging yourself? And I'm like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5%. And yet, so we know that, right? We know that we only think about ourselves. Let's be honest. People, we think about us. That's just, and it's not being selfish or anything like that. It's just a survival thing. We want to survive in the world. So we are always focused on ourselves and on our ego, right? Now, and we still believe, which doesn't make sense, we still believe that people are thinking about us, that people are spending shitloads of time all day long just worrying about what we wear, worrying about our bodies, worrying about how we behave. We're judging all that. They don't. They might spend maybe a microsecond thinking about something that you've done and maybe they thought it was a bit rude. And that's it. And then they're back thinking about themselves again. And there's something quite relaxing about this, right? They like, don't worry, they don't care. They don't think about you, right? And the second thing that I always tell people is that don't forget that People experience you through their own thinking. People's experience of you isn't you. Even in the same way that your own experience of yourself isn't real either. It's also through your own thinking. Have you noticed once sometimes you see a picture of yourself and you're like, fuck, I look awful, I look fat, I look this, I look that. And then 5 years, but sometimes even 5 days later, right? It doesn't need to be 5 years later, it can be 5 days. You look at the picture again, you're like, what was I talking about? I look great. What was I complaining about? Right? You haven't changed. The picture is the same, right? But your mindset is different. Your thoughts are different. You don't experience the world, you don't experience people, you experience your thinking about them, and they do the same. Which is why yeah, so
What color glasses are you wearing? Like, what color lens are you wearing?
absolutely. The lens is your thoughts. And when you get that, what's amazing is that it gives you a huge sense of, first of all, of compassion for others, right? Because if they are having if they're behaving a certain way or anything like that, it's nothing to do with you. It's nothing to do with anything. It's everything to do with what's going on in their head in that moment that is making them see the world or making them see you in a certain light, right? But it also gives you an immense sense of control because once you know this, if you know that your experience is wrong, is not right, or is struggling with your experience in the moment, it's nothing to do with people around you. It's nothing to do with the world. It's everything to do with you, what you're making of it in your head. And the wonderful thing about that is that thoughts are transient. They pass. They don't last. You have a bad thought and then it goes and then you have a good one, right? So all you need to do is just wait. And it's not to say, by the way, because I'm sure some people will listen to that and be like, oh, come on, there's some people who are really pushing my buttons and really, yeah, 100% for sure. And there's going to be people who are going to make you, and I'm using air quotes here, feel worse than others, right? But it's always due to your thinking in the moment because you realize that these people, even the people who are really triggering you, even the people that you're really struggling with, there are going to be times where you can handle them. There are going to be times where they're not going to bother you that much. If it was really up to them, how you feel, that wouldn't be possible. And it's taking that responsibility back and that freedom. And that freedom comes with that responsibility of knowing that I am actually responsible for how I feel. It's not up to them. I do not give them the power. They don't have the power of make me feel anything. They can be triggering, but at the end of the day, I'm responsible for my own experience.
Yeah, that's incredible. And like, it's really interesting what you said about the freedom thing. I'd rather be, when I was kind of like spitballing these ideas and just writing notes about, because I know what I'm like. I'll write golf and then we'll start talking about random stuff that's just really not relevant and not very helpful for people. It's something that I'm working on, and something that I said here was around like I'd rather be free than right. Having these right thoughts and right, like being actually like it's about being free, and sometimes you might be wrong, you might be right, and having that kind of separation between like you and the result and you and your goals, you and to an extent like your behavior and
Yeah.
I snapped because like it doesn't make you a bad person. You can then choose to act differently next time or apologize or whatever, and you can it's one of those ones. Yeah, it's free.
Yeah.
Freeness and
It's freeing. Yeah.
yeah. So just before we start to move on, let's just dig down healthy goals and like what do they look like? What's kind of good frameworks to kind of go through and um around around that before we start to move forward. So what I found particularly interesting is like when we were talking about the healthy goals and going back over some of that stuff is I want X because Y. So I want to leave my job because of like now, like you said, the goal of like, oh, because I hate it, because I don't make enough money, like that's certainly like a space that I've been caught in a year ago. Is that's all that kind of was in my awareness. And when you start to like look at things like like you said, to change the, the why in that equation, the one is not what's right. It's the why where it's like, you know, pushing you forward in a positive way, and like there's actually like an improvement for well-being and to learn new skills and almost like have
And
a positive challenge.
yeah, and I think something very important says that it's completely normal to first think about the thing you don't want and to think about the negative. And because, we're wired for survival, we're not wired for happiness. So we default to the negative always. So have a little bit of compassion for yourself for these moments where you're like, well, I want to change it because I hate it, because this, because that, and that. And I'm not an advocate of positive thinking your way out of life. I don't believe in it. I think thoughts are just thoughts. You don't actually choose them. And actually, most of our thoughts are negative. And it's not about forcing positive thinking. It's about knowing that thoughts are just, it's like the metaphor of your brain is like an oven, and it bakes cookies all day. Some are burned, some are good, right? Some thoughts are good, some thoughts are bad. Trying to make a bad thought into a positive one is like taking a burnt cookie and pouring shitloads of sugar on it and try to eat it anyway. It still tastes disgusting. It's not going to work, right? Trying to positive thinking your way out of life is only going to create a feeling of frustration, feeling of, again, not enough or not managing and all that stuff. So what I would say is it's okay to have these, like, I don't want this, I don't want that. It's good, good. You don't know what you don't want. By elimination, you're going to be able to figure out what you want. Then when you're ready for this, when you're ready to move on to what you actually want to look into, and again, that's usually what happen in a less triggered, less emotional state, when you feel a bit calmer about it, you can start thinking about the things that you want from a different job. And then that's when you look into the purpose. That's when you start looking for purpose. That, I want to earn more money. Cool. Why? What is that going to do for me to earn more money? Because usually people don't just want to earn more money. That's not what they want. Money on its own, sitting in a bank, not doing anything, doesn't actually do anything. It's just a thing. They want security. They want to be able to travel. They want to be able to provide for their family. These are the purpose that are going to drive their goal and allow them to reach their goal much easier. It's not just about the money. So it's about understanding what is it behind that I want? What's the bigger picture, the bigger purpose that I want? And removing the shame, the guilt, all of that stuff about all of these things. Again, like materialistic things. It's fine. It's okay to want a big ass car. Like I had this client, one was like, I'm shit at cars, so I don't know, but it was like something really fancy. I don't know what it was. And I was like, okay. And he felt a bit ashamed to tell me this. And I was like, it's fine. Like, I was like, what is it that you want about? Like, what's in it for you? And then after digging a little bit, we realized that he spends a lot of time in his car, a lot of his life spent in his car. He travels a lot. And then he was like, it's my safe haven. I feel so good in my car. I want to feel comfortable. I want to put the music on. And I want it to be a luxurious experience for myself. And then he never thought of it this way. And the moment you realize that, it was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. That he got super excited about it. Instead of being shameful and guilty about wanting to have an expensive car, suddenly that became super motivating and inspiring. So there's no bad goals. Just be clear on what the purpose behind it is.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. This is, like for me, this is such important stuff. And, in like kind of the whole personal development, and it's like, you need goals, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. And it's kind of having that, like, there's like this rush, like it's now rush, 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 rush. And like you live in a world of instant gratification and dopamine hits. Like, listen, a lot of it is just wait. Like you are
Yep.
gonna, like, if you're sitting there and like in a state of panic and scarcity, like, and rushing, ah, like that isn't a good necessarily the not I mean, sometimes, yeah. Like if you're crossing a road, then actually, like, there's a car coming towards me quite quickly.
Well, that's your judgment. Yeah.
The idea
Yeah.
is probably a good idea,
Yeah.
or getting out of a junction and you're like, oh, whoops,
Yeah.
and like that, like it does serve a purpose. But like when we're trying to almost think and act differently, when we're in that space of like scarcity, not enough, quick, 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 quick. It, like, I just don't think that's a good place for making a decision. And I rewind the clock. That's about 5 years now. I was speaking to like a mentor, and I was like, I need to do this and I need to do that and make all these decisions. And he's like, no, you don't. He's like, you need to sort yourself out. Like, he's like, you right here, right now, quivering mess, are not going to be able to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Go and sort yourself out.
Yeah.
The way I always have it in my head, and I always think about it, is like, is chess not checkers. Like, we're in this like such like panic state, quick dopamine hit, instant gratification, scroll. Actually, like it's like a game of checkers. It's about getting from one side to the other as quickly as possible. There's no real kind of like big strategy or game plan. But actually, within chess is a slow game. You're not thinking about your next move. You're thinking about 3, 4, 5 moves time. And you're setting up the goal to achieve. So you checkmate down the line, and it does sound silly, but it's so so simple. And like, if I sacrifice one of my pieces here to put you in a dangerous position where I can then get from a different angle, like that's so it can be really.
I can tell you that the neuroscience behind this is very simple, is that in a moment of stress, like our brain, when we are in danger, moves from, so you've got the prefrontal cortex to the front of your brain, which is the one that takes the decision making center, analytical brain, the one that you use when you play chess, for instance, right? And then you've got the back of your brain, the first brain that's been developed when we're a fetus, which is called the reptilian brain, which is and the mammalian as well, which is basically the emotions and the stress response. That's what allows you, like you said, if you're in the street and a car is coming at you, to get out of the way. In that moment, you don't want to be sitting being curious about it, be like, know what I should be doing. You don't want your prefrontal, right? You don't want your prefrontal cortex to be working. So your prefrontal cortex switches off so that your instincts kick in. Now, this is a really, really useful and amazing system that helps us get out of danger. Problem is, in the last 10,000 years, our life has become much more safe, at least when you live in the Western world, when you live in countries like the UK and stuff like that. So we're not confronted to actual physical danger. We don't need to, for most of us, thankfully, we don't need to find shelter, food, and all that stuff and risking our lives every day doing this. However, everything else has evolved incredibly quickly, and our body and mind haven't had time to adjust. So the system that we're using to solve these psychological issues, these emotions, is basically our fight, flight, freeze response being activated constantly, thinking that there's an actual physical danger out there. And so we are not able to make decisions in this moment. We need the prefrontal cortex to be online, but it's not online because our body somehow thinks that we are in physical danger. So that's the reason why you can't make a decision in this moment. And it's not a flaw. It's your biology misunderstanding what's going on.
Yeah. I think when you start to understand and realize that you're not broken, your body, mind, it just focus on you.
Yeah. 100%.
Like, maybe give it another 10,000 years, we might kind of start to evolve past that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Not really here. So like, let's focus on what we can do now. Like, it's about like we were saying, it's just like, okay, like that's just a limitation of humans, unfortunately. We're changing that, but like, let's focus on like, a lot of this stuff is supposed to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Now, kind of like the second thing, and it's something that I know that what we spoke about on the phone the other day, is around embracing uncertainty. Now, it's something that it seems very unnatural. It's like embracing uncertainty, and I was reading your article about this, and I kept reading it and rereading it and rereading. Actually, there's so much in here that like I fully haven't got my head around. But also, looking at like there were some things that I've really found like really interesting, and I think it flows on quite naturally from that kind of like what we were saying about like decision making. I see is people simply just being paralyzed by like decisions and options, and like weighing up things right or wrong, what's best, what will people think, what if this, what if that. They're just caught in this like overwhelm. How do we start moving away from those sort of those sort
So what you're describing here is what we call paralysis by analysis, right? And it's the feeling, it's the misunderstanding. Well, it's the worry of making a decision without having all the information and not knowing exactly how things are going to pan out. There's a massive element, like a flaw in that thinking, in that logic, that we don't realize that we don't know how things are going to pan out until we actually propel ourselves into action. We have no idea what's going to happen. Not only because there's so many factors, external factors that we cannot control. That's the first thing, right? There's a lot of things that we cannot. And if you think about it, many times, if you think of you're catastrophizing about something that's going to happen, like 99% of the time, if not 100% of the time, it's never as bad as you thought it was going to be. And you always manage to survive it, right? The reason behind that is that it's none of what you imagine is going to happen because you don't have a crystal ball. You don't know. And the second most important thing, and this is where people start to relax when they understand that and they start looking back at their past experiences, is we have it within us what I call the self, your wisdom, your instinct, what you can reach to, which there's something you can dip into when you're not overthinking, when you can just listen to yourself a little bit more. That ability to know what to do in a moment. And when have you been in a situation where you haven't been able to pull yourself out of it? I mean, the only fact that you're here right now shows that you have, that famous meme on Instagram, you survived 100% of your days. And it's true. You've solved 100% of your problems, even if some of the problems you were hoping to solve them in a different, maybe better way, you solved them, all of them, right? Because you're here. And this is what people fail to see, is that they have managed to figure it out as they go, because that's what we do as humans. Because we are meant for the world of form. We're not doing so well in the world of thoughts. Because remember, our thinking is 70% negative. Our thinking is wired for survival. So when we are overthinking things, it's going to be negative. Have you ever heard of someone say, I've been overthinking this and it looks great? Can't wait. That never happens because overthinking by definition is negative. Right? Now, again, this isn't about slapping some positive thinking onto the whole thing. It's not about, no, think positive. It's that. It's just realizing that your thinking isn't telling you anything you need to know. Your thinking is happening without your consent. Negative stuff. Sure, if you're stressed about something, you feel a bit insecure, you're going to go into overdrive and your thinking is going to go like crazy, right? But I've got a lot of clients. I'll give you an example. I used to hate public speaking. I used to be terrified of public speaking and I love it. It's probably one of my favorite things to do. And I work with a lot of clients who are in the same situation as I used to be. And once a client of mine said, like, I don't understand, Charlotte, are you not scared? I was like, yeah, I am. So I am. I was like, do you not have these thoughts? Sure, I do. Like every single time I'm about to step on the stage or go on a podcast or do anything, I always have, depending on sometimes more than others, but I will have a little flutter in my stomach, a bit of scare, and some thoughts coming up, like being like, oh, you can't do this, who you think you are, da 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 da, all of that stuff. The difference is, I don't care that I do anymore. I'm not trying to convince myself otherwise because I treat these thoughts are just things that happen in my brain that do not mean anything because your thoughts aren't actually telling you anything you need to know. Your thoughts are here to protect you. And protection isn't always, like we just established, protection is protection against physical danger, not against emotional danger. There's nothing here that can hurt you, right? So it's understanding the role and the essence of your thoughts in the moment, that they are not here they're not orders. They're not telling you anything you really need to know. You don't need to do anything about them. You don't need to positive thinking you're aware of it. You just need to keep doing what you're doing. And a little trick that I like to give my clients is, because really, when you think about it, you can't act and think at the same time. As soon as you propel yourself into action, as soon as you take that decision, again, you don't know if your decision is good or bad until you've taken it. But as soon as you start acting, you're going to start learning and you're going to start learning if that decision was good or not. But also, your thinking is going to calm down immediately. You can't do both at the same time. So action is the enemy of overthinking. So one little trick that I like to tell my clients to do is when they are stuck like that in that loop, is to tell yourself, what was I going to do before I started to care about how I feel? What was I going to do before I started to care about what I'm thinking? and do that. And then you'll figure it out. And then if the decision was good, you'll know. If it was bad, you'll know. And then you can adjust and you can course correct and you can do different. And it goes back, it's a good, nice little loop back to what we talked about at the beginning, right? It's about curiosity, not judgment. Does that make more sense now?
Yeah, definitely. And it's just that I think it's like you said, when you jump into the doing and you've made that decision, and then like you said, you act upon it, even to an extent. Like, I know when I've made a decision before, there is that sense of like that noise starts to, or I've committed something, not necessarily done a lot about it. And it just like, okay, like, and you're then focused on like, go that route, that kind of like,
Hmm.
I wrote in here, like, kind of like the fog. Now, you're not, it's not going to suddenly be completely clear all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like I said, you can do that, and something about coming back to it is like actually, like, if you go down that route and you decide actually that's a bad idea,
Something else.
come back and like, what if you just went and made good of it anyway?
Absolutely.
It's put in this like, what's the optional way? But like, just remove like, again, that you then stay in this kind of like preemptive overthinking, like uncertain phase when you're not really doing anything about it. Like something you said that was really interesting in your articles about like how all decisions are inherently uncertain, like
Hmm.
black and white. A lot of things are shades of grey. Yeah, when you start to think about that, and like it was like last night, I skipped the gym. It allowed me to have the space to explore this new thing, and I'm like, oh, like had I done that and got myself really caught up in it, actually that decision, yeah, on the surface of it could be inherently bad, but actually it then allowed to have the space, and then like I can start to act upon it. I've started to ask questions. Okay, well, if I, who do I know that I could talk to about this? How can I start exploring that idea? What would that start to look like? Is that something I'm actually interested in?
Yeah.
Find more information. And like I said, it's then that allows me to then make my next decision, which might be not to do anything, or it might be to double down and be like, oh, actually, this is cool. But I'm going to go and find out more, because you can like use the example of like applying for a job. Apply just top of Indeed. That one will do. And you go and you get it, and you don't find anything about it, and then suddenly it's like a library, like it's a librarian. And I don't know why I'm going to start picking on librarians. you know, Somebody who like values like talking and being like in a busy and a loud environment, but all you're going to be doing is sat there in silence because library, stamping books. You might need like a real variety of tasks, and lots of things to get kind of your teeth sunk into. Whereas it's like this one thing, and it's actually a really bad decision. So like you do sometimes need to gather a little bit of information and do your research, but then it's where does that then become where you start to get into this like overdrive, overthinking, like, you know, drain of energy, where you're just rating on the spot and not actually moving forward. You're just in this like, again, you go back into that analysis paralysis of like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, like everything just seems so overwhelming. Yeah. So what would you say, like, where do people get stuck here? Where, with like embracing that uncertainty, and how do you feel that you start to kind of like smooth that process of actually going and just not doing it anyway, but start to move forward with it?
But I think it is doing it anyway, and I think it's small steps. Small steps is always the best way to go about this. I think the reason why we get stuck as well in these paralysis is because there's a feeling of overwhelm. There's too much that needs to be done, or it's either there's too much that needs to be done, or it's picturing already the end results and thinking that we're already going to get there. And so then because it's such a big leap, we're never going to be able to go back. And there's this sense of um this sense of not being able to change and to have almost like a of your future being decided for you, essentially. Like that's what it feels like. It's like, what if that wasn't the right decision? What do I do? Of course, if you're seeing yourself at the end of the line, it becomes really difficult to imagine that you could course correct. So that's where small steps are really important. And I always say, like, it's okay to feel overwhelmed. Like, I feel overwhelmed literally on a daily basis, like between motherhood and work and all of that stuff. But it's just, you don't need to worry about all the stuff that you've got to do. You just need to worry about this one next thing that you need to do. That's it. If you take that one next thing and you just focus on that, and you make it achievable, and you make it actionable, and it's literally can be as simple as picking up the phone and calling a client, or texting something, or filling out a form, something like that. It doesn't even have to be the whole process of something. It's just this one next thing. Well, what will happen is you'll find that you can do it, first of all, that you'll be able to do it. So it will then again propel you into that action, get you out of your head, get you back into the present. And then it's like the lovely little self-feeding feedback loop at that moment where, well, I can do that. And I have done it. Okay, so now you feel a little bit more motivated. And now what's the next thing I can do? And then I can do that too. And then it starts to snowball in a very nice and lovely sort of thing. And that's not to say you're not going to go back into overthinking, but every time you do that, just remember, the reason why you are scared is because you're scared of a mountain of things. You're scared of maybe not being able to do it, or you're scared of something like that. That's it. There's nothing else in your environment that is dangerous right now. So it's always going back to, what's the one thing I could do? What's the one thing I could do in the direction of my goal today? And that's how I start all of my days, by the way. I start my days thinking, if I can't get anything done today because life gets in the way, and I could only do one thing, what would be that one thing? And that's the only thing I think about until that one thing is done. And then I look at the other and add something else.
Yeah, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm kind of coming back to this idea of like the toxic goals sort of thing, which is a really nice full circle moment. We're talking about how like getting to that end point, and focusing solely on the end, but actually like we're missing out the big bit in the middle. Now end result over here, that little bit in the middle, like we're
Yeah.
missing out on so much, you know, so many decisions, like so much time, so much stuff. Like you're thinking about, like I said, when you're in that uncertainty of thinking, you're like, okay, end goal, but like we forget the middle bit. And like,
Yeah.
I think over the last few years, how many goals that I set, and it was just about end goal, end goal, end goal, end goal, end goal. It's that there was like no consideration for the bit in the middle.
And the bit in the middle is where the joy is.
Yeah.
That's also the sad thing about it, is we miss on the joy.
Yeah.
We miss out on the joy.
It feels fake, and I got into this point of like, I start writing all these things down, and I'm like, they're never going to happen. I think the routine's a bad thing. You end up in this space where it's just it's fake. It's more about ticking boxes than doing it intentionally.
So
The joy of every day, and I think it's when you start to realize these things, and like you notice like an old behavior pattern. I spend like probably 2 to 3 times a day at least. I'm overthinking that, but like there'd be points of the day where I start like laughing to myself, and it's like,
yeah.
I would have done that, or I used to make this mistake, or that thing used to really rile me up, and you just,
Yeah.
I said, you just become it almost like a gamify, and you have that joy, that little bit of joy in every single day. And it, it does sound a bit woo woo, but like ultimately, like what are you after? Like it all being about the end goal, and that's the only thing that matters. Like again, that just keeps you so stuck, and that's what I see. I see and I talk to people, like there isn't anything in the middle. It's just painful and horrible. You're not gonna, there's never a happy ending to an unhappy journey.
Mhm.
Everything's gonna be really
No, I agree with that.
berries and skipping around holding hands, like like the joy can be in noticing that little bit of progress, and having that like little moment and laugh to yourself, which I think is a really good point to kind of start wrapping things up. I love a full circle.
Yeah, nice.
We come back and I'm like, that's a boat. um, yeah. So, classic end of the podcast question. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so I mean, my Instagram is Charlotte Melki official for people who want to have a bit more. So what I try to put as much stuff out there like this, the things that we actually talked about today, in terms of how your thoughts run the show most for everything that you do, and how to take your thoughts less seriously. And from that place, you can start achieving all of your goals from a place of ease and peace and joy, and just enjoy your life while you just thrive at the same time. Enjoying and thriving are two things that go hand in hand. So yeah, so like you can find me there. And yeah, that's it. And my website, which is under construction at the moment, so it looks shit. So by the time this podcast is out, it will be much better.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Javi.